I now welcome Ngala Kala Booja Aboriginal Corporation and local traditional owner elders to give evidence today.
Sure.
Sorry.
All good, all good.
Thank you, Jackie.
For the Hansard record, would you please state your name and capacity in which you appear before the committee, and we'll start with you, Mr. Khan.
Karam Khan, work for the GKB or Ngala Kala Booja Aboriginal Corporation, but today I'm here as a Noongar and traditional owner for this area as well.
I am Stevie Anderson. I'm a Nyamal Nigana Matu woman, and I am a member of the Climate Justice Union. I'm here to support the elders, and thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Bruce Jorgensen, CEO for the Ngala Kala Booja Aboriginal Corporation. Thanks for your time.
How you going? I'm Philip Ugle, traditional owner of Collie, born here on the river of this town. I was the last person to do so in my family. I talk on behalf of me and my brother Joe Northover, who's absolutely sick, so he can't be here. And
Thank you. This hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament that giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Before I invite you to make a brief opening statement, then we proceed to discussions. Would you please state if you're a current or former member of a political party or a union or an investor in the renewable or nuclear industries, please? Mr. Khan, we'll start with you.
I don't know what union I'm in, Bruce, with the corporation, but not affiliated with any union or any political party, I think was the question there as well. So.
Yep, thank you. Ms. Anderson?
Only Climate Justice Union, which I'm not sure if that's relevant. Also, I'll just add that, Uncle Joe Northover was supposed to be here, who has to attend medical appointments in Perth, so he couldn't come along. And also Uncle James Khan, who has just had a passing in the family, so he has sorry business and he couldn't come along either.
Sorry to hear that.
I'm not conflicted in those matters.
no conflict.
Thank you. I now invite you to make a brief opening statement before we proceed to questions. And whoever would like to start first.
Actually, I might start with that. Or are you okay with that?
You go.
Sure. So I wanted to let everyone here know that I'm here at the request of the traditional owners of this area as the CEO of Ngala Kala Booja Aboriginal Corporation, endorsed by the state of WA as the representative body for the traditional owners of this area. The corporation was formed as a result of the Noongar Recognition Act of 2016. In essence, I'm here to let you know that the traditional owners speaking today do so with the greatest cultural authority and respect of GKB and its members. What GKB does not do is make a value judgment on whether or not nuclear energy is superior to renewable energy. That is not our role. Our role is to represent the majority view of our members. We've done the same thing with the offshore wind proposal, as we went out to our members with a survey to discover how they actually felt about it. Once we had that information, then we were keen to go out and represent that view on their behalf. What is important to us if a project like's being discussed today is to go ahead, our role in that would be the protection of Aboriginal cultural heritage with the powers that are conferred to us under the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act, WA, of 2007 or something embarrassingly old like that. And the protection of the environment is as well. So we take a very careful and close eye on what's being done to our country. We represent at the highest levels in that space too. So due diligence, someone mentioned for FPIC earlier on as well. That's a big part of what we do with any kind of proponents. We would ensure that our community, being the Aboriginal community and members of GKB, would be represented and consulted through the process.
Anybody else giving an opening statement?
I'll just tell you that I represent this community as well, so I'm here to represent my town and my community, as well as GKB and all of the people around the southwest that belong to that. So it's very important that we are clear on everything, that we need to know that our people understand what the future will be, you know, because that's what we want. We want the best for the future. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Anything from Mr. Khan or Ms. Anderson?
Yeah, so I guess just important for everyone in the room to know that I'm here representing my Noongar people, so not the corporation, so I just want to be clear on that. So from my perspective as a traditional owner, as a Noongar person, you know, Budja has been mentioned a few times already, so our country is really important to us, and it's our Mother Earth, so, you know, we connect strongly to that. Anything that impacts on our country, we have deep concerns around. And we've seen a destruction of our country over many decades of activities that have gone on in our patch. I've spent 28 years within the forestry, in government, you know, working on country. And for something like this to come along without us really understanding what it is, you know, that's real deep concerns to us and to me as an individual and as a Noongar person. I've seen the destruction of our country. I've witnessed it. I've felt it physically and spiritually. Does that make sense to you? Yeah? So this is real for us. So I'm hoping that this can get through and the message gets to you. So we need to really understand what's actually on the table here. There was a statement earlier on saying this is potentially untested. Okay, so we know nuclear around the globe is being utilised. We've seen some of the devastation of that utilisation of nuclear. Now, the stuff that's happening on our country right now, you know, we can still live on our country and we can still be part of it. But from what I understand of what's happening around the globe, if things go pear-shaped, what happens? You know, how can we be in it? We can't be in our country anymore. We've got to go. And this whole community will have to go. So when we talk about untested technology here, which, you know, those are the words that came out, that's a real concern. And we've got to understand what that actually means for us as well. So that's my thoughts on it. Yeah.
Ms. Anderson, anything from you? Or
I'll just say that, yeah, pretty much what Karim is saying, that the Noongar people care a lot for their country, and it's not the first time that they've had to fight for their country. I am not a traditional owner here. I'm more of a carer. My country is up in the Pilbara, but I've been here a long time, and yeah, feel very connected to the country here. And when this proposal has come along, it is feels like quite of a threat. You know, and promises that it can be safe, haven't really, been, what's the word? Yeah, it doesn't feel like it, could be safe, so.
thank you. We'll start with Mr. Chester.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you everyone for being with us today. I appreciate you taking time to be here. Ms. Anderson, can I take you to the Climate Justice Union? I didn't get a chance to ask questions of them before. I just wanted to quite understand the organisation. Is it you join as a member? Are you a staff member as well, or is it you join just that you pay a fee to be a member?
I pay a fee as a member because I value their work in community. So I've been a member for about 2 years. Pretty much straight away I begun working with elders. So what I do when there's a lot of meetings in town referring to the transition, and I help elders get to those meetings. As I said earlier, 2 elders are missing today.
Yep.
So, in advance I will explain, what,
So
what this meeting's about. And
You live in town and do some liaison work for people who may not live in town to come and do the consultation. Is that sort of?
what was that last bit, sorry?
So you live in town and do liaison work with the local community,
Yep.
but some of the people who do the work may have to come to town for the meetings. They don't necessarily live in the town.
I do live in the town, yes. Jamie is from Perth, so it's really important that, and because I don't want to speak down to my elders, but I maybe can understand things a bit more. The elders are so busy, dealing with all these different organisations, so I am able to help, and it's really valuable that in any consultation that there is that liaison person to really bring it all together.
Thank you, because a lot of the hearings we've held around the country have focused a fair bit on this question of social licence and consent, which is really difficult to establish or figure out when you've got an issue where people have different views on it. And Mr. Jorgensen, you referred to the majority view. GKB will try and assess that. But we've already heard today that consent can be given and then taken away. It could be a fluid process. How do you go about establishing what the majority view looks like from your perspective?
Yeah, okay. So what we've done in the past is a survey out to our members, which is 1,000 plus people that are connected to the GKB country.
And across how big a geographic area is that?
So that sits within our ILUA, our Indigenous Land Use Agreement with the state government, which is fairly broad. Starts from Kwinana down through to Collie and then out into the wet belt.
Big area, yep.
Yeah, it's quite a big area. In particular, I mentioned earlier on a survey around the Bunbury offshore wind zone declaration, and there was some fairly polarised views on that within our members. You guys might be interested to know that none of the objections from our members were due to visual amenity. I think that speaks a lot. It's more around environmental impact and the social licence aspect of it rather than visual amenity. So, and it's a good point, that the shifting tides of opinion. We haven't asked for an opinion from our members as yet because we don't think there's enough information available to go out with that questionnaire.
No, I appreciate that, and I think Mr. O'Brien referred to earlier that any consultation would be quite extensive to try and provide some of that gap in the factual information.
Yep.
One of the interesting things that I found with the inquiry was we heard in Queensland from former members of the Greens who are very supportive of renewable energy and still supportive of large-scale renewables. Their argument was if you had a small amount of nuclear in the energy mix in Australia, you would reduce the actual footprint of the overbuild of large-scale renewables. So acknowledging that whether it's a solar farm, a wind farm or a coal-fired power plant or a nuclear power plant, there's an impact on the environment. And their position put to us was if you had a small amount of nuclear in the grid, you wouldn't have to overbuild quite as much of the large-scale renewables. So I guess it's not really something you can particularly comment on, but it was an interesting reflection on everything we're doing is having an impact on the environment. How do we mitigate and keep the lights on, I guess, is the essence of my question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I'd start by saying we're not in a position of making value judgments on any kind of alternative energy, but I do have to say that since the state government has slated the closure of Collie, the mines and the power stations, that every kind of alternative energy proposals have come through our office, which includes everything from offshore wind to onshore wind, biofuel, green energy, green hydrogen, brown hydrogen and blue hydrogen. So there's been a lot. And I suspect with the amount of onshore wind that's being proposed out the back of Collie here, it'd be difficult to walk through the bush without walking to a turbine, I suspect. So it'd be interesting to, be welcome to see a little bit of common sense come to this whole aspect of what this is going to look like in providing the state's needs through changes in energy provision in Collie, keeping in mind that this town's, in my view now, has the opportunity to be a centre of excellence for alternative energy, whatever that might look like as a way forward for the town.
Last question, Chair. I just noticed the package for Collie fact sheet put out by the state government indicates 547.4 million package for Collie, of which $300 million is a pipeline for decommissioning, so it's actual work that has to occur anyway. I just noticed it's a very large part of that fund. Looks like it's directed at the decommissioning projects. But Mr. Khan, can I take you to your evidence about working in the forest? I'm particularly interested in your practical skills in the bush. From a natural resource management, is what the bureaucrats like to call it, are we spending enough now? I mean, in Western Australia, are we spending enough now to sustainably manage your natural resources in consultation and in cooperation with the Indigenous owners, or are we underspending on that already?
Well, I mean, I think you're underspending. Obviously, you know, we want to take a lead role in looking after our country again. A role that's been taken from us from history. You know, a couple of hundred years of that opportunity being taken away from us. So, and you know, I've always had a view that we should be able to make decisions on what happens on our country. And this topic that we're talking about now, we need to be able to make a decision on how this, if it does get supported, if it gets rolled out. Our view has to be considered in this conversation as well. So, you know, forestry is forestry, and looking after country is important, but this stuff here that you're talking about is different, okay? If a wind turbine sitting at the back of Collie here falls over, it'll fall over and impact that area. If this thing crashes here, what's the impact of that? We don't know that. Do people in this room know what the impact of that is? Because we don't. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So this is what we're trying to get to.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chester. Mr. Bennell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for providing evidence today. I'm interested to just get to a couple of points, and just for clarity, one of my other committees that I sit on is the Joint Standing Committee of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Affairs. So in that committee, we've had a lot of discussion around connection to country and the healing and learning that happens on country. I'm just interested to get your perspective of your local community, what the key issues are for you and the impacts of that ability to be able to learn on country, to heal on country, etc. If, as you say, Mr. Khan, something goes wrong and we have a wide-scale incident that means, you know, land is contaminated.
Well, my view is that the governments prior to even now and into the future have never ever fixed up what's left behind anyway, whether you're Australia, state or local. So nobody wants to take the blame. You know what I mean? What's left behind is left behind. This acidic water that's left behind in these places is absolutely shocking. If it doesn't be treated, it can't be put back into the system. So where they're going to get stuff like that to treat it? There's only nature. I've been working since 2001 on stuff like this. It's shocking. Sometimes you feel like you have to give up, but you don't. You keep going. Otherwise, what does the future look for the great-grandchildren right down the line? That's
I can add.
Yep.
So potentially, if there was risks, when you're talking about mucking around with Aboriginal people's connection to country, and there's a risk of something happening to the country here, you're creating a problem Because when Aboriginal people aren't on their country, they don't have access to sacred sites, there's a roll-on effect. And it could be something that the government could be they're happening. So you look at the roll-on effects from the stolen generation. My own family, my grandfather was taken, one of my grandmothers were taken, and there's a lot of effects that have happened when they were taken from their country up north to down south. And it really does create issues. So if there was something to happen here and all the water here and the underground water got contaminated, you'd be looking at something pretty big, not just a work issue.
Mr. Cream, do you have anything further to add?
What was the question again? What was the comment?
Just as far as the localised impact to your ability to be on country for the next generation that sit behind you, to be able to learn on country, for your people to be able to heal on country. Like, I'm interested to get the immediate impact to your people if we were to have an incident which meant the ongoing exclusion of not just First Nations people but all people from those lands if there was to be an incident.
Well, I guess you've got to have a country to go to, and if you don't have access, then that's the impact. Then we can't meet all our cultural and spiritual obligations of our country. So it's a given. And when we talk about country and Aboriginal people, Noongar people talk about country, we're not just talking on our behalf. We're talking about human beings, because if we don't look after our country, it affects all of us. So that's the reality of the world we live in. So, you know what I mean? So I guess our connection, might be deeper than the Australian community, but we want them people to join in with us on that and understand what that connection is, because there's conversations around how can you truly live and be part of this country if you only live on it and not in it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And the only way you're going to live in it is to get connected with your traditional owners that live and breathe this country. Does that make sense also?
This is the importance of being the custodial guardians of the lands on which we're on.
100%.
Thank you, Mr. Burnell. Dr. Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry I can't be with you physically this afternoon. Could I ask, please, about your feelings regarding the possible impact of nuclear power stations on the water supplies and aquifers in and around Collie?
Well, this is Philip Ugle here. Like I said, I've been working since 2001 on the waterways and the water that's left behind from mining around this country. And the water that's left behind, if you can't treat it, it's very acidic. It's pH 3. So being pH 3, you can't do much with it. You've got to treat it, then use it. And some of that water's been used out at Muji Power Station now because it gets treated. We set up a system where the mining company treated the water and put back into the east end of the Collie River. So I was doing all that hoping to think that it'll improve things. But then only a couple of weeks ago I heard that once the mining stops, then so will that water treatment. So what are they going to do with that water? It's going to seep back into the aquifer.
Did you want to speak about the spiritual connection? You want people to
Yes, and what we believe in, especially here in Collie, is a thing called the Nunungara Twagu. Now, we do our custodial ceremonies around Minnup Pool, whether it's birthing and whether it's death. So we still do cultural things here. And we had to prove that to the federal government, and we had them have a court down here, court hearing, to prove that we still are cultural people here. So it's a hard thing to swallow sometimes, you know? I hope I answered that for you.
Thank you. Could I also ask, we've heard a lot from other First Nations communities about social licence and their concerns about not being appropriately consulted about potential developments like nuclear power plants on country. What are your feelings about that? Do you feel that you've been adequately consulted to date? And if not, what sort of consultation do you think would be appropriate going forward? How long would it take and what would it look like?
Well, we haven't, and we don't, and we still haven't been consulted about anything that goes on in Collie. Like you've seen on the news and the rest of West Australia, or whoever's seen the news, Mr Dutton just ignored us and put us off. But why aren't we consulted with? But we should have been the first people that they came and talked to, or any government in this town, whether it's any town now. We were supposed to be promised these sort of rights when we got our land back. But then you find out all sorts of things that's been happening behind doors. Why are they drilling our country out here in the bush for the future for Worsley and South 32 and places like that, and getting away with it? No consultation is not good enough for us. There's no clarity on everything. We need it, and we should have got it right from the start, not this now. And I'd like to say another thing. On the Climate Justice League, none of them people live here. They don't live in this town. We do. Stevie is our connection to them. Just like to point that out. And you know, we're here for multi-generations concerns, not just our own. We know that that's what the future is. So these are the things that the government needs to understand, that we want that as well, but we want the best and the help that's needed to be done properly.
Thank you, Doctor. Anything else, Dr.
Thank
Ryan?
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much for being here today. And just my own declaration, I think, Ms Anderson, we have met before, I think, maybe Mr Ugle too, I think at a previous forum I ran here a few months ago. So just for the information of the committee, just to be very transparent about that. So lovely to see you again and to have another conversation with you, and do appreciate the opportunity to get your views, as well as Mr Khan, yours, and on behalf of the group, Mr Jorgensen. I've sort of been reflecting a little bit on different elements of feedback from each of you, and Mr Khan, you are saying that there's a whole bunch of questions about, you know, what would be the impact if something went wrong, and also Mr Jorgensen saying that there's still just not enough information out there to draw a firm conclusion, and also listening to you, Mr Ugle, just sort of your views about the past, and that you haven't felt as though you've been listened to. Because our approach is to have up to 2.5 years of comprehensive community engagement, which will allow the community to identify the key things they want answers on, and to get answers, not from the politicians, but from independent experts. Is that something you think that the local community, the traditional owners in particular, would welcome that opportunity, given you haven't had it in the past, clearly.
Yeah, well, I'll answer you straight out there. Yes, we would. That should have happened at the start, mate. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to be making anything hard for no one. I mean, to say there's always going to be talk about the economical values of all this happening. We're worried about jobs. Of course we are. But renewable jobs too can put jobs and train these people, if they're young enough, if they want to be trained, to go into that sort of field of work. So there's always going to be an answer for whatever questions come at you.
No, thank you, and I share your view on renewables too.
Yeah.
And so much as Mr Jorgensen, you sort of said no value judgments. So much as we're here talking about nuclear energy, at least as the spokesperson from the coalition, we don't make value judgments either on technologies. Our approach is all of the above. Let's see what is best going to work, and it's sort of having a balanced mix of things. As we think further about our plan to have a comprehensive community engagement process, do you have any other advice for us if we were to be elected, based on the experience to date that clearly hasn't been working? What's your candid advice to us? Well, if you want to do this right on the ground and actually have a proper community engagement, what are the things we should take away and think about? Maybe Ms Anderson.
Yeah, so you're going to be doing a number of consultations, you know, probably more than one a month, or doing it at a time when it's available to people, and also paying them, because nuclear is, it's a big thing, but, you know, we've all got other things, whether it's kids, jobs, other meetings, making sure you value those people's time, really going down and helping those people who have a really good opinion and need to be consulted, making sure that they get to that meeting, whether it's transport, you know, consultation before the consultation, because that is what is needed, you know. A lot of old people all the way around are looking after, you know, grandchildren. So, you know, the logistics of getting to meetings and getting a carer for those kids is pretty hard.
Thank you. Please, Mr Carter.
It's interesting that in this day and age, you've got to ask what do we need to do to consult? Do you know what I mean? It's just, I just don't get it, because, you know, this has been going on for so long, and you're still asking these questions in 2024. You know, what can we do better to consult? Well, probably, you know, don't just make an announcement on the television and then rock into town and you don't let the TOs come and have a conversation. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Yeah.
Definitely. Sorry, I'll just add one thing. Definitely doing it different to your last forum that you did at Roach Park. Just make it, much more inviting. Me and the traditional owners, we rocked it up thinking that we were crashing it, but we wanted to be involved. It turns out it was okay to be there, but it seemed very hidden, the invitation. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr Jorgensen, anything?
This harks back a bit to the doctor's comment around, or question around social licence to operate as well. So one of the things missing from social licence discussions, and this goes, you know, across the whole energy portfolio, or any other portfolio for that matter as well, and the social surrounds aspect of EPA approvals, is the soft language that's still being used by government around consulting with traditional owners. And it's become quite awkward and difficult, particularly in our area right at the moment. As I mentioned earlier, the amount of proponents that are coming to see us who have been told by the state and federal government that they need to consult with the regional corporation, but not telling anyone what that consultation has to end in. What does it look like? What does that mean, right? So what, instead of using best endeavours kind of language or open-end consultation with traditional owners, we want the proponents to be sure that, to know that there's an outcome has to come from that. And this is that social licence to operate stuff. If you're coming to see us, they need to have our endorsement for the project to go ahead rather than just a consultation period. And that's my advice across the board at all levels of government, because it's become particularly awkward.
Thank you.
Well, my view on that is that for the future, you need to account for all the community, not just one little aspect. I mean, to say, we as a community, we sit here and we feel so frustrated that we're being unheard or untalked to about anything like that. I mean, to say, the Shire Council are voted in by the people of Collie. They're not here to be the end-all and give the say to, yes, let's go, because that's not the way it's meant to be. They get voted, and they can be voted out when they go for their next term. That's how it works. Isn't that how Australia's been working for ever since the first arrival, when they made laws? So why has things changed? Why have we not been put in there to be told that we want this? And do we agree with this? You know?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr O'Brien. Mr Kenny, we'll have time for one question from you, then one question from Mr
Just one
Mascarenhas.
question. Sure, just one question. That Mr O'Brien, the Energy Minister, has just said, wants to engage on a 2.5 getting ahead of myself. Wanting to engage on a 2.5-year process. And in some ways, I wish you'd had the experience we've had for the last 3 weeks, because we've seen energy experts from all over the world. We've spoken to renewables experts. We've been able to have these people, this committee here, from overseas, from all over Australia, chief scientists. Mr Khan, I know you asked a question about how dangerous it is. We had David Packham in Gippsland tell us wind is 25% more dangerous, hydro is 43 times more dangerous, and coal 820 times more dangerous. No one here to say whether he's wrong or right, but he was at CSIRO. I think I'm hopeful in that 2.5 years we can give each community the opportunity to get that level of engagement to then come to their own decision, as Mr O'Brien was saying. That's what I hope consultation would deliver. And my question is on jobs. On the jobs front, we've also heard evidence and had evidence submitted from the Department of Energy in the US. Nuclear jobs can pay 50% more than renewable jobs. 77% of coal jobs can transfer to nuclear power plants. What would you say the biggest needs of the Collie community are right now in your perspective?
Well, I think you need to hear from Uncle.
Do you want to go first, Uncle?
No, you just go in there.
First, we need to have those conversations with traditional owners first and foremost. We need, the main one is the jobs, always, but it's not just that. You go down, we need support, education, training. Our young ones need help with mental health. Get the drugs away. We need to get the young ones up and moving. Jobs and money is just not going to cut it for some of us. You can chuck a uniform on a kid and put them in the factory, but it's not going to fix everything. So, definitely the mental health support.
I think it's important to note that when we kind of take the view at the corporation around jobs from an industry being a given, you know, below the line rather than above the line, if you like. What we want to focus on, generational change when it comes to jobs, comes from providing meaningful and interesting jobs that are attached to a career path and hopefully a tertiary qualification as well. So, so I think that's really important, and it needs to be fleshed out in any kind of proposal, what that looks like. So, jobs, support for Noongar people who would like to start a small business, you know, around any kind of proposal, really important. And I think, just to touch on Mr. Khan's, point, point around the danger of a proposal, we have to remember what he's talking about is the country being uninhabitable for half-lives rather than just getting injured in a coal mine, right? So,
yeah, it's a big one to get comfortable with.
Yeah,
Yep. Okay, thank you.
My view is that these people can be trained for positions in renewable. So I can't see why that has to be an aspect whether you worked in a powerhouse and you can work in a nuclear powerhouse. What's so different? If you learn how to run it, you can do it. The other thing is that we talk about promises, you know, the promises that are made to the Noongar people all the time, and they've been broken that many times. I don't think there was one promise that's ever been given, unless I go back to when I was 18 years of age. So it's no use sitting there and thinking that I'm not going to bring up, like, where's their policies, Indigenous policies with these companies? I work on, say, 10%. You're never going to get 10% in a lifetime, or maybe 10, 20 lifetimes, right? But why aren't they negotiating with us, big business, and doing this? Why aren't they coming and see the people and ask us if we want a policy for the Indigenous people of this community? Why is it so that multi-billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars of taxpayers' money have been given back to the government, and no Noongars or Aboriginal people in the southwest own their own houses? A lot of answers that I need to know. You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to jobs and that, nothing's been done.
Can I just add, sorry, I can't believe I forgot, Arnie's just reminded me that we are really short on housing in Collie, like it's impossible. If you, for some reason, you're renting a house and the owner's selling it, you're in big trouble because you're not going to be able to find somewhere to live in Collie. And also just, adding like childcare and just that support for families. Mums aren't supposed to be doing it all on their own, and you know, you got mums with trauma who are doing it on their own, putting it on their kids. Those kids are going to have trauma, and you're just going to keep getting you know, these people growing up not being able to live a good life, like thrive, because they're forever, you know, trying to survive. So there's literally something, that we need to work on with that.
Thank you, Ms Anderson. Ms Mascarenas, just quickly due for a question.
I'll ask a yes/no question. So we've been talking a lot about prior and free and informed consent, and if the coalition is genuine about the consultation process, do you think that Collie should be able to say no and the proposal doesn't go ahead, or alternatively, they can just do what they like?
I truly feel at the moment that 2.5 years is what they want to win us over and make us say yes.
Any other comments?
I'd just like to say that I've been informed by the elders of this town, so I speak for me and them, and it's just simple no. I don't care what government you're in, what background you come from, we don't want it, and so we're going to say no. All right? So please understand us. When we say no, we've done our homework. We know that it's no good for no one. Where are you going to put this plutonium? What's plutonium good for? One thing, mass destruction of human life. So the answer is no for me and my people. Understand it, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time today. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. If you've been asked to provide any additional information, including questions on notice, please